They said Christmas was for immediate family this year. I am Joel's mother. I have been his mother for 53 years. I held him through pneumonia at 7 months. I paid for his college. I helped with the down payment on that house, the one with the guest room they now call the office. But apparently, I am not immediate family. The phone call came on December 8th. Joel's voice had that careful flatness he uses when Linda has told him what to say. "Mum, we're keeping it small this year, just us and the kids, you understand." I said I understood. I always say I understand. What I understood was that Linda didn't want to set an extra place. That Madison, 17 now and glued to her phone, wouldn't have to pretend interest in my questions. That Tyler, 13, wouldn't have to endure my attempt at conversation about video games I didn't play. That I was a bother, an obligation, background noise. I had suspected it before, of course, the visits that grew shorter. Linda's tight smile when I arrived, as though I had shown up uninvited to her own dinner table, the one I had paid for. The way they positioned me in family photos, always at the edge, easy to crop out. But suspicion is different from confirmation. Suspicion you can deny. You can tell yourself you're imagining things, being oversensitive, getting old and paranoid. Confirmation has a sound. It sounds like your son saying, "Just immediate family," as though you are an extended relative, a distant aunt, someone invited out of politeness, not love. I stood in my kitchen after that call, receiver still in hand, looking at the advent calendar I had put up out of habit. Little pockets I'd filled with chocolates no one would open, the tree I'd planned to decorate, the gifts I'd already started wrapping. 53 years of motherhood, and I'd been disinvited from Christmas. The strange thing was how much it didn't shock me, how easily it fit into the pattern I'd been pretending not to see. The "forgot to call you back" excuses, the shortened visits, the guest room that stopped being mine and became storage, then an office, then a locked door. I wasn't immediate family. I was the woman who sent checks, who bought gifts, who showed up when called and left when dismissed. I was a service, not a person, and I'd been one for so long I had almost forgotten the difference. I walked to the refrigerator and looked at the photos held by magnets. Joel and Linda's wedding, 24 years ago. I'd paid for half of it, the venue Linda wanted, the photographer she insisted on. In the photo, Linda beamed at the camera. Joel smiled down at her. I stood 3 people away, my dress a careful beige that wouldn't upstage the bride. Madison's graduation photo from last spring. I'd been there, of course, sat through 2 hours of names I didn't know, in uncomfortable bleachers, because that's what you do. In the photo, Madison clutched her diploma, parents on either side. I wasn't in that one. I had a copy of it anyway. Linda had texted it to me with "thought you'd want this" and 3 party emojis. Thought I'd want a photo I wasn't in. Of a milestone I'd witnessed but hadn't been part of. The calendar on my wall showed December 8th, Tuesday, 17 days until Christmas. I'd already bought most of their gifts. Joel's wool sweater, the expensive kind that doesn't pill. Linda's silk scarf, Madison's gift card. Teenagers only want money now, Linda always said. Tyler's PlayStation game, the one he'd mentioned once 6 months ago, probably forgotten by now. I'd wrapped them carefully. Corners precise, ribbon curled. I'd even bought the good paper, the heavy kind that doesn't tear. For immediate family only. The house was quiet. Robert had been gone 8 years now. Heart attack at 70, sudden and clean. He'd left me this house, his retirement, and silence I still hadn't learned to fill properly. The kind of silence that made me say yes too quickly when Joel called. Made me drive 40 minutes to babysit when Linda had errands. Made me show up early to their parties and stay late to help clean. Made me useful. Being useful meant being wanted, I'd thought, being needed. But I'd confused being needed with being valued, and there's a difference. The phone sat on the counter, screen dark. Joel wouldn't call back. Why would he? He'd delivered the message. Christmas was settled. I was settled. Outside, my neighbour Molly's daughter Annie shrieked with laughter in their yard. 6 years old, gap-toothed, always waving. Last week she'd brought me a drawing of a butterfly. "I made this for you, Miss Eleanor," she'd said, very seriously, as though she'd painted the Sistine Chapel. I'd taped it to my refrigerator. It was still there, lopsided wings and all, more visible than any family photo. Funny how a child I'd known for 6 months had given me something none of my grandchildren had given me in years. The sense that my existence mattered beyond what I could provide. But Annie wasn't family. And apparently, neither was I. The next morning, Wednesday, I did what I always did. I got up at 6:30, made coffee, ate half a piece of toast I didn't want. I watered the Christmas cactus on the windowsill, Robert's mother's, 60 years old, blooming right on schedule like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. Or maybe nothing had changed, and I was just finally seeing it. I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee and my phone and did something I rarely did. I looked through old text messages. August 15th. "Mum, can you watch Tyler Tuesday? Linda has a thing." I'd said yes. September 2nd. "Mum, Madison needs $200 for the art trip. Can you Venmo?" I'd sent $250. October 9th. "Mum, the furnace died. I know this is a lot to ask, but..." I'd sent a check for $800. Told him not to worry about paying it back. Family doesn't keep score, I'd said. But someone had been keeping score. And I'd been losing for a long time. November 3rd. "Mum, Linda's parents are coming for Thanksgiving. You're still coming though, right? I'd gone. Linda's parents sat at the head and foot of the table. I sat between Tyler and Madison, both on their phones. I'd brought 2 pies, homemade. Linda had put them on the counter and served store-bought instead. These are just easier to slice, she'd said, not looking at me. I'd taken both pies home, eaten them alone over 4 days, slice by slice, each bite tasting like something I couldn't name. Now I could name it. Rejection, dismissal, the particular flavour of being tolerated rather than wanted. I scrolled further back, June, May, March. The pattern was clear once you looked for it. Every text from Joel started with a request: money, babysitting, help, favour, emergency. Never, how are you? Never want to get coffee. Never. Madison made honour roll and told me to tell you, because Madison hadn't told him to tell me. Madison didn't think about me unless I was in front of her, and even then, barely. I pulled up my bank statements on the computer. This was harder to look at. This required acknowledging numbers. January through November, this year alone, $14,600. Furnace, Madison's art trip, Tyler's hockey equipment, Joel's car repair, Linda's emergency root canal, although I had no idea why her dental work was my emergency. Birthday gifts, graduation gifts, Christmas gifts from years past. The check I'd sent in March when Joel mentioned, casually, that things were tight. Things were always tight for them. Never so tight that Linda didn't get her nails done every 2 weeks. Never so tight that they skipped their anniversary weekend in wine country. But tight enough that I kept my checkbook ready. Robert had left me comfortable. Not rich, but comfortable. The house was paid off. His pension and my social security covered my needs, with enough left over to help, to be generous, to be the kind of mother who didn't make her son ask twice. I'd been so proud of that, so grateful I could help. Now the numbers felt different. Not like generosity, like payment. Like I'd been buying a relationship that only existed when I was spending. The guest room. God, the guest room. It had been mine for the first 6 years after Robert died. Yellow walls, quilts I'd made, my clothes in the closet. Your room, Mom, Joel had said. Keep whatever you want here. Then Tyler was born and needed a nursery. Fine, I understood. Babies need space. Then Tyler moved to a big boy room, and the guest room became mine again for 3 months. Then Madison needed it for her sewing projects. Then Linda needed an office. Then it needed a treadmill that no one used. Then it was storage. Then it was locked. We just don't have space, Linda would say on the phone when I asked about visiting. But you're always welcome to come for dinner. Welcome for 3 hours. welcome to bring food, stay through clean-up, drive home in the dark. Never welcome to stay, never welcome to belong. I'd been a guest in my son's house, and now I wasn't even that. I closed the laptop and sat in the silence. The house made its small sounds around me. The furnace cycling, the refrigerator humming, a car passing on the street. Normal sounds. The soundtrack of a life I'd built around being available, being useful, being there when wanted and invisible when not. The Christmas cactus bloomed cheerfully on the windowsill, crimson flowers against dark green. Robert's mother had given it to us as a wedding present, something living, she'd said, for luck. 60 years. The cactus had outlasted Robert, outlasted my usefulness apparently, but it kept blooming anyway. I picked up my phone and opened the Notes app, started a list, though I wasn't sure yet what kind of list it was. Things I have paid for, half their wedding, nursery furniture 2x, Madison's braces, 3 emergency loans unpaid, furnace, car repairs 4x, medical bills, Linda's dental, Tyler's stitches, Joel's prescription, every birthday, Christmas, graduation. Things I have not received, thank you cards ever, Christmas invitation this year, phone calls that don't ask for something, photos that include me, space in the guest room, daughter-in-law who looks at me when she speaks. Things I have pretended not to notice. I stopped. That list was too long. That list was everything. Outside, Annie shrieked again, some game with Molly in the yard. The sound carried through my kitchen window, bright and uncomplicated. I looked at the list on my phone, at the numbers, at the pattern I'd been performing for years, like a script I'd memorized without questioning who wrote it. And something in me, something small and quiet that I'd been ignoring for so long I'd forgotten it existed, said, "Enough." Not loudly, not dramatically, just a single word in the silence. Enough. I went to Target on Thursday because that's what you do. You buy Christmas gifts even when you've been uninvited from Christmas, even when the word enough is sitting in your chest like a stone you can't swallow or spit out. The store was crowded, families everywhere, mothers herding children past displays of wrapping paper and ornaments, teenagers sprawled across shopping carts while their parents browsed. An elderly man and woman, maybe 80, walking slowly hand in hand through housewares, pointing at dish towels as though they mattered. I'd come for Joel's sweater. The cashmere one I'd seen him admire in September, the one Linda had rolled her eyes at because who spends $200 on a sweater? I did. Every year. I spent $200, $300, whatever it took, because that's what mothers do. We spend and give and show up and hope it's enough. Except it was never enough. And now I knew it never would be. I stood in the men's section holding the sweater. Navy blue, extra large, perfect. I put it back. The woman next to me glanced over, curious. I must have looked strange, standing there empty-handed, staring at expensive knitwear like it held answers. I moved to the women's section. Linda's scarf, silk, patterned with birds. I'd seen her look at one like it at Marshall's in October. Too expensive, she'd murmured, putting it back. Not too expensive for me to buy for her, apparently, never too expensive for Eleanor to handle. I picked it up, felt the fabric. It was beautiful. Linda would love it. She'd open it on Christmas morning in the house I wasn't invited to, and she'd hold it up and say, "Oh, how nice!" in that way that meant she'd already forgotten I existed. I put it back. Madison's gift card. Easy, impersonal. What you give when you don't know someone anymore, or maybe never did. I didn't even pick it up. Tyler's game, the one he'd mentioned that one time, he wouldn't remember. By Christmas he'd have moved on to something else, some new obsession, and he'd hold the game I'd bought and say, "Thanks, Grandma," in that vague way. That meant he was already thinking about something else. I left it on the shelf. I walked through Target empty-handed, past the toys, past the electronics, past home goods and seasonal and checkout. I walked out to my car, got in, and sat. The parking lot was full. People loading purchases into trunks. Families laughing. Christmas music drifting from the store entrance, tinny and cheerful. I'd come here planning to spend $600 on people who told me I wasn't immediate family. I'd come here ready to prove my worth with gifts they'd barely acknowledge. I'd come here to perform the script I'd been performing for years. And somewhere between the men's section and the car, I'd forgotten my lines. The steering wheel was cold under my hands. December in Michigan, the kind of cold that gets into your bones and doesn't leave. But I wasn't shaking from the cold. I was shaking because I'd just walked out of a store without buying Christmas gifts for my son's family, and I felt something I hadn't expected to feel. Relief. At home, I went to the hall closet where I'd stored the gifts I'd already bought. The ones from November, before the phone call. Before I knew. Joel's book on woodworking, Linda's candle set, Madison's earrings, Tyler's Lego set, wrapped, ribboned, tagged. I carried them to the dining room and set them on the table. 4 boxes, 4 people who'd made it clear I wasn't family. The tags were in my handwriting. To Joel, love, Mom. To Linda, with love. To Madison, Merry Christmas from Grandma. To Tyler, love, Grandma Eleanor. Love, with love, from Grandma. Words I'd written automatically, without thinking, because that's what you write, that's what grandmothers do. But love is supposed to be mutual, it's supposed to flow both directions, and I was looking at 4 wrapped boxes that proved I'd been loving alone for a very long time. I found a storage bin in the basement. Clear plastic, the kind you use for seasonal decorations you'll bring out next year. I put all 4 gifts inside, closed the lid, carried it back to the basement. Maybe I'd return them. Maybe I'd donate them. Maybe they'd sit in that bin forever. A monument to the Christmas I didn't perform. For now, they were out of sight. The dining room table was empty, clean. The space where the gifts had been felt bigger than 4 boxes should have left. My phone buzzed. I looked at it without picking it up. Joel, Mum, did Madison's package arrive? She said she ordered something to your house. Not, how are you? Not, are you okay? Not even, sorry about Christmas, just another request. Another assumption that my house was their storage facility, their backup address, their convenience. I stared at the message, watched the 3 dots appear as he started typing again, then stopped, then started. Finally, can you check? I turned the phone over, didn't answer, walked away. In the kitchen, the Christmas cactus bloomed. Outside, the afternoon light was already fading. 4:30 and almost dark. Winter pressing in. I made tea I didn't drink, stood at the sink, looking out at nothing. This was what it felt like to stop performing. This hollow space where the script used to be. This was what enough felt like. And I didn't know yet if it felt like freedom or just a different kind of alone. The mail came on Monday, December 12th, 17 days since the phone call. 13 days until Christmas. I'd been checking the mail with a specific kind of attention for the past week, the way you check when you're hoping for something you know won't come. Bills, grocery store flyers, an invitation to renew my AARP membership. No Christmas card from Joel and Linda. They'd sent one every year for 24 years. Linda ordered them in bulk from Shutterfly, those glossy cards with family photos and silver lettering. "Merry Christmas from the Hartley family," they always said, though my last name was Hartley too, and I was never in the photo. Last year's had shown them at the beach. Joel's arm around Linda, Madison and Tyler holding surfboards, grinning. "Summer memories," the caption said, though I hadn't known about the trip until the card arrived. This year, nothing. I stood at the mailbox in my coat and slippers, holding junk mail, looking down my empty street like maybe I'd see the mailman coming back with a card he'd forgotten. But there was no forgotten card. There was just the truth. They'd decided, collectively, as a family unit that didn't include me, that I wasn't worth the stamp. Back inside, I put the flyers in recycling, paid the electric bill online, sat at the kitchen table with my tea. The Christmas cactus was still blooming. Every morning I checked it, half expecting the flowers to have died overnight, the way fragile things do, but they persisted, crimson and stubborn. Outside, I heard Annie's voice. "Miss Eleanor! Miss Eleanor!" I went to the window. She was in my driveway, wearing a purple parka 3 sizes too big and boots that didn't match. Molly stood behind her, smiling apologetically. I opened the door. "We made cookies," Annie announced, holding up a paper plate covered in foil. Chocolate chip. Mommy said we should share because that's what neighbours do. Molly shrugged. We made way too many. They're still warm. I took the plate, felt the heat through the foil. That's very kind. Do you like chocolate chip? Annie asked, serious. Because we also made sugar cookies, but I ate most of those. I love chocolate chip, I said. And I did, suddenly, standing there with this 6-year-old staring up at me like my answer actually mattered. Good, Annie beamed, gap-toothed. Merry almost Christmas. They left. I went inside with the cookies, set them on the counter, and stood there looking at them like they were a puzzle I didn't know how to solve. When was the last time someone had brought me food? Brought me anything without me asking, without it being a birthday or obligation? I couldn't remember. I opened the foil. The cookies were misshapen, some burned at the edges, some underdone in the middle. Perfect amateur work, made by people who didn't care about perfection, just about the making. I ate one standing at the counter. It was good. Too much salt, not enough sugar, but good in the way that homemade things are good. Because someone made them with their hands and thought of you. The taste was warm, not the temperature, though they were still warm, but warm in some other way. The way kindness tastes, when you've forgotten what kindness feels like. I looked at my own kitchen, at the flour canister on the counter, the baking sheets I hadn't used in weeks, the mixer I used to use every December, making cookies for Joel's family, for neighbours I barely knew, for the church bake sale, performing generosity, performing connection. But Molly hadn't performed. She'd just brought cookies, and Annie had just wanted to share. That's what neighbours do, she'd said. Not that's what you do when you want something back. Not that's what you do to prove your worth. Just that's what neighbours do. I washed my hands, got out the flour, sugar, butter, chocolate chips. I didn't have a reason. I just wanted to bake, wanted to make something with my hands that wasn't for anyone in particular. That was just for the making. The kitchen filled with the smell of butter and sugar, the sound of the mixer, the timer ticking. Normal sounds, the sounds of someone living in their house, doing something because they wanted to, not because someone asked. I made 4 dozen cookies, chocolate chip, like Annie's. I made them correctly, the right proportions, the right temperature. 12 minutes at 350, cooling racks ready. When they were done, I packed half in a container for Molly and Annie. Tomorrow I'd bring them over. Tomorrow I'd say thank you. Tomorrow I'd return the kindness. The other half I left on my own counter, for me, to eat whenever I wanted, however many I wanted, without anyone commenting on my sugar intake or my willpower. Mine. The word felt strange and new. These cookies are mine. This kitchen is mine. This time is mine. This life is mine. I ate 3 cookies with my tea. They were perfect, better than the ones I'd made for Joel's family every year, the ones I'd packaged so carefully, the ones Linda always said were so sweet, before putting them in the back of the freezer where they'd get forgotten. These cookies I would remember, because I'd made them for myself. And that felt, for the first time in longer than I could name, like something close to joy. Christmas morning arrived, the way mornings do when you're dreading them, too early and inevitable. I woke at 6:15 to silence. Complete silence. The kind that presses against your eardrums. In other houses, children were probably awake, tearing through wrapping paper. Families were gathering in kitchens, starting coffee, starting the performance of togetherness. In Joel's house, probably, everyone was still asleep. Or maybe they were awake, moving around that living room I'd helped furnish, unwrapping gifts under a tree I'd never see. Were they thinking of me at all? Had Linda, maybe, said something? Should we call your mother? Had Joel said no, or, and this felt worse somehow, had they not thought of me at all? Had Christmas morning happened in that house as though I had never existed? My absence noted the way you might note a missing ornament, a vague sense that something's off, quickly dismissed? I got up, made coffee. The house was cold. I turned up the thermostat and stood at the kitchen window while the furnace kicked on. Outside, the world was white. Snow had fallen overnight, soft and clean, the way it does in movies about perfect Christmases. Molly's house had lights on. I could see shapes moving behind the windows, hear faint laughter. Annie would be up, probably, shrieking over whatever Santa had brought. Normal, happy, whole. I looked away. The Christmas cactus bloomed on the windowsill, indifferent to holidays. Flowers that didn't care what day it was, what I was missing, who had forgotten me. I sat at the kitchen table with my coffee and my phone. No messages, no calls, nothing. On other Christmas mornings, I'd have called Joel by now. "Merry Christmas!" I'd have said, "Too bright, too early." I'd have asked what the kids got, what they were doing, if they needed anything. I'd have made myself part of their day by force, by performance, by refusing to acknowledge that I wasn't wanted. But this year, I didn't call. This year, I sat in my kitchen and drank my coffee and felt the silence settle around me like snow. It hurt. God, it hurt. An ache that started in my chest and spread outward until my ribs felt too tight and my hands felt too empty. But it was a clean hurt, an honest hurt, the hurt of truth rather than the dull ache of pretending. I picked up my phone, not to call Joel, to call the bank. Their automated system answered. "Merry Christmas! Our offices are closed today, but you can..." I hung up. Tomorrow then. Tomorrow I'd call. Tomorrow I'd start the process of revoking Joel's access to my accounts, the power of attorney Robert and I had set up years ago when it made sense, when Joel was trustworthy, before I understood what trust actually meant. Tomorrow I'd make it official. But today, Christmas Day, I could at least make the decision. And the decision was no more. No more automatic deposits into their account for emergencies. No more blank checks. No more access to funds I'd earned, Robert had earned, that belonged to me. If Joel needed money, he could ask. In words. To my face. And I could say no. I could say no. The thought felt revolutionary and terrifying in equal measure. I'd never said no to Joel, not in 53 years. I'd said of course and anything you need and don't worry about paying me back. I'd said yes until yes became the only word I knew. But yes hadn't bought me a place at Christmas. Yes hadn't bought me love. Yes had bought me silence and absence, and a storage bin full of gifts in my basement for people who'd made it clear I wasn't immediate family. I set my phone down and looked around my kitchen, at the quiet, at the space, at the life I'd built around being available, being useful, being whatever they needed whenever they needed it. And I thought, what if I built a life around what I needed instead? What would that even look like? I didn't know. I'd forgotten maybe, or never learnt. For 53 years, I'd been Joel's mother. For 42 years, I'd been Robert's wife. For 8 years, I'd been Robert's widow. But who was Eleanor? The question hung in the silence, unanswered. Unanswerable, maybe. But the asking felt important. Like the first step towards something I couldn't see yet, but could sense waiting, the way you sense sunrise before the light breaks. I finished my coffee, washed the cup, looked at the clock, 7:45. Outside, Annie was in the snow, wearing pyjamas under her coat, dragging a new sled. Molly stood on the porch, filming, laughing. I watched them for a moment, then I went to the closet, found my own coat, my boots, the scarf I hadn't worn in years. I went outside. The cold was sharp and clean. The snow crunched under my boots. Annie looked up. "Miss Eleanor, Merry Christmas! Look what Santa brought." "I see," I said. "That's a fine sled. Do you want to try?" I paused. When was the last time someone had invited me to try something, to play, to be part of something just because? "Yes," I said. "I think I do." Molly smiled from the porch. "Coffee's on if you want to come in after." "Thank you," I said, and meant it. I pulled Annie's sled up the small slope of her yard. She sat in front, I gave her a push, and she flew down shrieking with delight. And I stood at the top of that hill, 69 years old, on Christmas morning, alone. Except I wasn't alone. And I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Present, visible, real. not immediate family, but here, now, alive. That was enough, December 26th, the day after Christmas. I called the bank at 9 a.m. as soon as they opened. I'd rehearsed what I'd say, written notes on a pad of paper as though I might forget my own needs if I didn't write them down. First Michigan Bank, this is Grace speaking. How can I help you today? Grace, a good name for this moment. I need to revoke power of attorney on my accounts, I said. My voice sounded steadier than I felt, and I'd like to remove someone's access to my checking. I can absolutely help with that. May I have your account number? I read it from the paper, heard typing, and the name on the power of attorney you're revoking, Joel Hartley, my son. A pause, just a beat. Grace had probably heard it all before, families fracturing over money, relationships dissolving over access and control. But the pause was there, a tiny acknowledgement that what I was doing was significant. I'll need to send you the forms. You can fill them out and bring them to any branch, or mail them in with 2 forms of ID. The power of attorney will be revoked within 5 business days of processing. And removing him from my checking? That I can do right now, with your verbal authorization. Is there anyone else on the account who should remain? No, just me. Perfect. I'm showing Joel Hartley was added in 2012. Is that correct? 12 years ago, Robert had just died. Joel had said, "Mom, let me help with bills. You shouldn't have to do this alone." And I'd been so grateful, so relieved that someone wanted to help. I hadn't noticed at first the emergency withdrawals, the transfers, the way help had become access. That's correct, I said, and you'd like him removed effective immediately? Yes. More typing. Then, done. Joel Hartley no longer has access to account ending in 7743. Is there anything else I can help with today? Actually, yes. I looked at my notes. I'd like to open a new account, a trust, for my neighbour's daughter, Annie Prescott. She's 6. Another pause. This one felt different, warmer. A trust for a child. That's wonderful. I can start the paperwork. How much would you like to deposit initially? I'd thought about this. Thought about the $14,000 I'd given to Joel this year alone. Thought about all the years before that. $5,000 to start. I'll add more annually. That's very generous. She gave me a drawing of a butterfly, I said, though Grace hadn't asked. She made it for me, not because she wanted something, just because she sounds like a lucky girl. I'm the lucky one, I said, and meant it. The paperwork took 20 minutes. Account numbers, beneficiary information, terms, signatures I'd have to provide in person. When we finished, Grace said, "You're all set, Mrs. Hartley. The forms for the power of attorney will arrive in 3 to 5 business days, and the trust account will be active once you come in to sign." Thank you, Grace. Thank you for calling First Michigan. And Mrs. Hartley, I hope you had a good Christmas. I did, I said. Actually, I think I did. I went to the bank branch that afternoon, signed the trust documents in careful strokes, my hand steadier than I'd expected. The banker, a young man named Marcus, processed everything efficiently. She'll be able to access this when she turns 18, he explained. Until then, her legal guardian can't touch it. It's protected. Protected. The word settled around me. I was protecting something, someone. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. Because Annie had invited me to try her sled. Because Molly had offered coffee. Because they'd given me cookies without expecting anything back. Because kindness should be protected, nurtured, given space to grow. Perfect, I said. Back home, I made soup, chicken noodle from scratch, the way Robert liked it. I hadn't made it in years. Too much work for one person. But today I wanted to. Wanted to smell onions and celery. Wanted to stand at the stove stirring something that took time and attention. I made enough for 4 people. Put half in containers for Molly and Annie. Tomorrow I'd bring it over. Tomorrow I'd tell them about the trust, though I wasn't sure how to say it yet. How do you tell someone you've given their child money, that you've chosen them? My phone rang at 5:30. Joel. I looked at his name on the screen. Let it ring. Once. Twice. 3 times. My hand didn't shake. My chest didn't tighten. I just watched it ring, calm and certain, and then I watched it stop. A voicemail notification appeared. I didn't listen to it. 2 minutes later, a text. Mum, we need to talk. Call me. Then another. The bank says you removed me from your account. What's going on? Then, Mum, seriously, call me back. I set the phone down, went back to my soup. The silence in my kitchen was different now, not empty. Not heavy, just silence. The normal sound of a house at evening, someone cooking dinner, someone living. Outside, it was already dark. December dark, deep and complete. But my kitchen was warm. The soup smelled like comfort. The Christmas cactus bloomed cheerfully on the windowsill, and my phone stayed silent on the counter, Joel's messages unanswered. Because I didn't owe him an explanation. I didn't owe him my time, my attention, my immediate response. I didn't owe him anything. And for the first time in 53 years, I was okay with that. On December 28th, I packed up the Christmas gifts from the basement. 4 wrapped boxes, Joel's book, Linda's candle set, Madison's earrings, Tyler's Lego set, $280 of thought and care for people who'd made it clear I wasn't immediate family. I put them in the trunk of my car, drove to St. Vincent de Paul. The donation centre was crowded. After Christmas returnees, people clearing out closets, families teaching children about giving. I parked and carried the boxes inside, one by one. Donations? A woman at the desk smiled. She wore a name tag that said Ruth. Yes. Wonderful. We're running low on toys especially. Kids need these wrapped, I said. They're gifts, Christmas gifts. They're new. Ruth looked at the boxes, at the careful ribbon, the tags I'd removed and thrown away that morning. Someone will love these, she said gently, like she understood, like maybe she'd stood in this exact spot before, with her own unwanted gifts, her own careful wrapping. I hope so, I said. I drove home through grey afternoon light. The sky looked like snow. The radio played a song I didn't know. My phone rang. Joel again. I pulled into my driveway, let it ring, went inside. 3 messages on my phone now. I deleted them without listening. 4 missed calls. Then a knock at my door. I knew before I opened it, knew from the rhythm of the knock, the timing, the particular quality of impatience. Joel stood on my porch, 48 degrees outside, and he wore only a fleece, like he'd rushed over without thinking. Like maybe Linda had told him to fix this, to handle me, to smooth things over so the money kept flowing. Mum, I stood in the doorway, didn't invite him in. Joel, what's going on? He looked tired, or maybe just annoyed. Hard to tell the difference sometimes. The bank said you removed me from your account. You're not returning my calls. No, I said, I'm not. Why? A simple question with a complicated answer. Or maybe a simple answer I'd been overcomplicating for years. Because you told me I'm not immediate family. He blinked, shifted weight from one foot to the other. Mum, it's not what you think. What do I think? Linda's parents were already coming, and Madison's boyfriend and Tyler invited a friend. And we just didn't have room. You have a 6-bedroom house, Joel. You have room. It's not about room. It's about... He stopped, regrouped. It was one Christmas. You're making this into a bigger deal than it is. One Christmas. As though the phone call existed in isolation. As though the pattern didn't go back years. As though I hadn't noticed every shortened visit, every unreturned text, every moment I'd been made to feel like an obligation rather than a person. Did you get my texts? He asked. About Madison's package. I did. And it's on your porch. I dropped it off yesterday. His face shifted. Confusion, then something else. You drove all the way to my house and didn't knock. You told me I wasn't immediate family. I didn't think you'd want to be interrupted. Mom, he said it like I was being difficult, like I was the problem. This is ridiculous. You're upset about Christmas, fine, but cutting me off from the account, ignoring my calls, that's childish. Childish. Interesting word coming from a man who'd relied on his mother's money for 12 years. I'm not cutting you off, I said. I'm establishing boundaries. By shutting me out? By stopping the automatic deposits? If you need money, you can ask, and I can decide. decide. He said the word like it was foreign. You're my mother. Yes, I am, and you're my son, but I'm not your bank. We stood there, cold air leaking into my warm house, Joel looking at me like I'd become someone he didn't recognize. Maybe I had. Linda said you'd pull something like this. His voice had changed now, harder. She said you'd make Christmas about you, make us feel guilty for having boundaries. Boundaries. He said the word like he knew what it meant. Like excluding your mother from a holiday was a boundary rather than a cruelty. Tell Linda I appreciate her insight, I said. And Joel, I'm not making Christmas about me, I'm making my life about me, finally. What does that mean? It means I'm done. Done apologizing for existing, done buying my way into your lives, done pretending I don't notice the pattern. Pattern? He laughed, sharp and disbelieving. What pattern? You only call when you need something. You only visit when it's convenient. You took me off your Christmas list, but kept me on your emergency fund list. That pattern. So this is about money. No. I met his eyes. This is about respect, about being seen, about mattering beyond what I can provide. Silence. He looked away first. I'll pay you back, he said finally, every penny, if that's what you want. I don't want your money, Joel. I wanted my son, but I don't think he's been here for a long time. More silence, heavy and true. Mum, you should go. It's cold. Are you serious right now? You're just going to what? Cut us off? Punish us? I'm not punishing anyone. I'm choosing myself. For the first time in longer than I can remember. He stared at me, and I saw it in his face the moment he understood I wasn't going to cave, wasn't going to apologize, wasn't going to fold myself back into the shape he needed me to be. Fine, he said, voice cold. Fine, if that's how you want it. He turned, walked to his car, drove away. I closed the door, stood in my entryway, and I didn't cry. I thought I would, thought the confrontation would break something in me, but instead I felt clear, light, like I'd been carrying something heavy for so long I'd forgotten how to stand up straight, and now, suddenly, I could. I walked to the kitchen, made tea, sat at the table. My phone buzzed, a text from Joel. Hope you're happy. I was. Not the way he meant it, dripping sarcasm and anger, but in the way that matters. I was. January 1st, New Year's Day. I woke to quiet. Sunlight through the bedroom window. The house at that perfect temperature where you're warm under blankets, but the air on your face is cool. Normal. Unremarkable. Perfect. In the 2 weeks since Christmas, things had settled into a new shape. Not the old shape, that was gone, broken, irreparable, but a new one. Smaller in some ways, larger in others. Joel hadn't called back. I'd seen Linda's car drive past my house once, slow like she was checking, but she didn't stop. Madison had unfriended me on Instagram. Tyler was too young to have an opinion, or maybe just following his parents' lead. The silence should have hurt more than it did, but I'd spent 2 weeks filling it. I'd had coffee with Molly 3 times. We'd talked about ordinary things, the weather, the neighbour's new dog, the grocery store running out of half and half. But ordinary felt extraordinary when it was genuine, when someone asked, "How are you?" and actually waited for the answer. I'd taken Annie to the library. We'd picked out books together, her small hand in mine, her excited chatter about princesses and dragons. "Miss Eleanor, do you like chapter books? Because I can read chapter books now." I'd told Molly about the trust. She'd cried, which made me cry, and we'd sat at her kitchen table drinking terrible coffee and talking about the future in a way I hadn't talked about the future in years. I'd joined a book club at the library, 8 women, ages 65 to 82, who met every Thursday to discuss novels and eat cookies and complain about their joints. I'd gone to the first meeting expecting to feel like an outsider and left with plans to host the next one. I'd started painting again, watercolours. Bad watercolours, but mine. I'd set up Robert's old easel in the guest room, my guest room, no one else's, and spent hours making flowers that looked like flowers, and trees that looked like something trying to be trees. I'd learned that loneliness and aloneness are different things, that solitude can be chosen, that mattering to a few people completely is worth more than mattering to many people not at all. Yesterday, December 31st, Annie had knocked on my door at 3 in the afternoon. She'd handed me a piece of construction paper folded in half. "I made you a New Year's card," she'd announced, "because you're my friend." Inside, she'd drawn 2 figures holding hands, one tall, one small, both smiling. Miss Eleanor and me, written in crayon at the bottom. I'd taped it to my refrigerator next to the butterfly. 2 drawings from a 6-year-old, more valuable than any Christmas card I'd never received. Now, New Year's morning, I made coffee and sat at the kitchen table with my phone. Not to call Joel, not to check if he'd called me, but to text the book club, "Happy New Year! Looking forward to hosting Thursday. Should I make cookies?" 3 responses came within minutes. "Yes, please, only if they're chocolate. Bring wine too." I smiled, set the phone down, looked around my kitchen. The Christmas cactus was still blooming. I'd looked up how long the flowers last. 6 to 8 weeks, apparently. Stubborn and beautiful, like me maybe, stubbornly blooming in winter. Still here, still alive. I thought about Joel, about the shape of the empty space where he used to be, about whether that space would ever fill, whether he'd ever understand, whether we'd ever speak again. I didn't know, and that was okay, because here's what I'd learned in the 2 weeks since Christmas, in the silence that followed my son driving away angry. Your worth is not determined by those who refuse to see it. It's not measured in money given or time spent, or how much you can shrink yourself to fit someone else's idea of who you should be. It's measured in the life you choose, in the boundaries you keep, in the people who look at you and see a person, not a function. It's measured in 6-year-olds who make you cards, in neighbours who bring you cookies, in afternoons spent painting trees that don't look quite right but make you happy anyway, in the courage it takes to say enough and mean it. If you're reading this, if you recognise yourself in this story, if you've ever felt invisible in your own family, if you've ever given and given until there was nothing left, I want you to know something. You are not selfish for wanting to be seen. You are not cruel for establishing boundaries. You are not abandoning anyone by choosing yourself. They abandoned you first, slowly, quietly, in ways you tried not to notice until you couldn't ignore it anymore. And it's not your job to fix that. It's not your job to keep performing love when it's not returned. It's not your job to stay small so they can stay comfortable. You are a person, not a service, not an ATM, not background noise, a person. And persons deserve to bloom even in winter, especially in winter. Your life is yours. It always has been. You just forgot. Remember now. Choose now. Bloom. I finished my coffee, put on my coat, my boots, the scarf I'd found in the back of my closet that I'd forgotten I owned. I went outside, into the cold, into the light, into the life I was building, one small choice at a time. "Miss Eleanor," Annie waved, mittened hand raised high. "Happy New Year! Come build a snowman." "Happy New Year, Annie," I called back. "I'll be right there." And I was.